we knew we were going to sell out after day one. It became clear that we did not bring enough copies. So we had to rent a car, and then Andrew Fisher drove down to Maryland, where our fulfillment center was, and then put some more games in the car, and then drive back up. And he did all that like early in the morning, and then showed back up just in time. We were just about to sell out, and he showed up with some extra copies. So it was perfect. Yeah, it went really well.
Welcome to the Peoples Behind the Meeples, the Gamefound podcast hosted by, well, me, Alex Radcliffe. Each episode features interviews with successful board game creators who share their journeys, struggles, and insights from crowdfunding their games. Discover their stories, learn what worked, and get valuable advice for your own projects. Join us today for inspiring conversations that reveal the passion behind the games we love, and along the way, you'll get to know the Peoples Behind the Meeples. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe, CMO of Gamefound, and today we're starting a new series of spotlighting various creators on the platform. Today with me, I'm joined by Andrew Navaro from Earthborne Games. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've just been watching. We just finished wrapping up the Gamefound Feast. It's been a busy day for us over here, but I'm interested in learning a lot more about your journey because, frankly, I'm coming in a little blind. I know a little bit about yourself. I know a little bit about Earthborne Games. You know, obviously you have Earthborne Rangers, which has been a smash success, but I know very little about, well, anything else. I don't know how you started. I don't know what your plans are for the future. I don't know what led you from point A to point B. I believe the designer of Earthborne Rangers worked in Arkham Horror. Is that correct?
Well, no. Maybe
game?
a little bit.
Was it a Fantasy Flight game? What was it?
Yeah, well, the designers of Earthborne Rangers, there's a few of us, started off as a design by Adam and Brady Sadler, who have done work on Arkham, but very, very little, and myself, and then Andrew Fisher, and with a little bit of Brooks Pfluger-Levitt thrown in there as well. We recently hired Maxine Newman, who was one of the designers of Arkham Horror, and she'll be taking over development of our expansions going forward. But everything up to this point has been mostly Andrew Fisher and I, and then some contractors that I brought along the way.
Well, so that's a good segue to start off from there. So how did Earthborne Games start as a company? Like, what led you from what were you doing before, and then what started Earthborne Games?
Yeah, well, so I've been in the tabletop industry for about 20 years now. I worked for about 15 years at Fantasy Flight Games. I had a bunch of different job responsibilities there. But when I left, and for like my last 3 years at the company, I was the head of the studio, which is pretty much the head of the creative team, the people who make the games, but didn't really have. We worked with Asmodee then at that point to do the production and marketing and sales and things like that. But I guess we had a marketing team at the time too. It was very convoluted. It's a big corporation. And things have changed a lot since I've left. But I was at Fantasy Flight Games for a long time. I was part of the leadership team there for about a decade. Learned a lot, from Christian Peterson, Corey Konecka, Steve Horvath, all the people who helped make that company into like a really gigantic force in the industry.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And all of those names you mentioned have all gone off and started their own companies.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. And when I never really expected to, when I was at FFG, of ever being in a position where I would be head of studio and be in an executive role. When I was there, I saw the company go through a lot of changes. When we first started out, we were very small. I was the 17th person on staff when I first joined FFG. And then by the time I left, we'd been acquired by Asmodee. We were part of a much, much larger corporation. And the studio itself, just FFG, was like around 90 people. I was there for a pretty big change in the culture of how things worked there, from being kind of nimble and small and kind of doing what we want to really having to take into consideration a lot of other factors, being part of a larger corporation and being responsible to being responsible to people who are maybe less intimately connected with what we did on a day-to-day basis, but were very, very interested in our bottom line. So by the time I left, I was pretty stressed out. I'm primarily a creative person. I also, I feel like I'm a good leader as well. But I think corporate life isn't really for me. So when I made the decision to leave, I knew pretty much right away that I wanted to strike off on my own and then try to do something that was more personal to me, something where I could be involved creatively. I could, use those skills and spend more time actually working on creating things as opposed to spending time in meetings and doing a lot of corporate politics and maneuvering, which is really required of the position at the time when I left. So I left Asmodee at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and then I formed Earthborne in February of 2020, and really immediately started working on Earthborne Rangers with Adam and Brady Sadler. I brought them on right away. I had an idea for a card game modeled after kind of the LCG format that had been pioneered by FFG, and then just went from there, and have been learning a lot about what it means to own my own business, learning a lot what it means to be responsible for every single aspect of the process.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. It's been great though. I've had a really great time, and it's a little over 4 years now that I've been doing it, and we've successfully funded and fulfilled one campaign, our Kickstarter campaign back in 2021, and we just completed our second printing campaign for Earthborne Rangers at the beginning of this year, and we'll be hopefully fulfilling that at the end of the year. So it's been really great, and it's very, very challenging. And while my job at FFG when I left was pretty stressful, I'm not going to say this hasn't been stressful, because it certainly has, but it's stressful in a different way. It's very different when you feel like you have when you feel like you have more control over your circumstances.
One of my favorite quotes I've always loved is, an entrepreneur is someone who will work 80 hours a week so that they don't have to work 40. I've always appreciated that. Like, as somebody who's always done my own thing as well, like there is a degree of freedom and control over being able to lead yourself forward, but there's also that sense of responsibility that never goes away. Some jobs, not all jobs, some jobs you can sit there and say, okay, great, and now this is no longer my problem, or now I'm home or done. There's more access nowadays than there used to be, but there's some degree of the buck doesn't stop with you. When you own your own company, the buck always stops with you.
Yeah, 100%. And it is really hard to not work.
Yes.
I think I'm almost always working in some way. It's very, very difficult to completely unplug. But again, it feels, it doesn't really feel like a burden. It feels like like what I want to be doing, which is great.
Yeah. One of the things Earthborne Rangers is known for is its environmental approach to the game. When did you know you wanted to do that? What was that decision tree like?
Well, that came pretty much after I'd made the decision to leave Asmodee, and then was starting to explore like what the future could look like. And one person who I was talking to a lot at the time was someone who I worked with at Asmodee, another executive who's on the business side, on the Asmodee side, named Michael Hurley, and he and I talked a lot about various environmental impacts of our games, and trying to find ways where we could make some changes. And what we discovered in working for Asmodee, it was really, really difficult to make any kind of meaningful change, because we were so focused on the bottom line that if you could do something for a little bit less than a different option, then you'd take the least expensive option. So because of that, doing things with the environment in mind was not really something that we felt like we could really do. So what really inspired me, and I've talked about this before, but what really inspired me and has kind of been my guiding light through a lot of the decision making when it comes to the production of Earthborne Rangers is he shared with me a book by the founder of Patagonia, who it's called The Responsible Company. It's a pretty quick read, and in it he talks about their journey in Patagonia and their ethos and their mission. And one of the things that he wrote about in there was talking about the human need, the desire to create. And in creating anything, if you want to create something physical, then you need to use the resources available to you and the resources that are, effectively from the earth. But in doing so, is if you're asking yourself the question, how can we make this thing while doing as little harm as possible, then you're doing it the right way. So that's how I started looking at Earthborne Rangers and just the ethos of our company is like, can we make hobby style board games that do as little harm to the earth as possible? Because I think there are definitely some, I've seen some kind of reductionist opinions out there who say, the best thing to do for the environment is just to not make anything at all, which I don't really, but sure, yeah, you could just sit in a hole and die, and then then sure, yeah, you won't be having any kind of negative impact on the environment. But that's not really what I'm interested in doing. So, since tabletop games are the medium in which I enjoy expressing myself, and I think bring a lot of value and joy to the world, I think there's a lot of value in them, and I think they're worth doing. So the question is, all right, can we make these, without without using, single-use plastics, without creating something that has, just a bunch of like plastic miniatures that are, one day are going to end up in a landfill, and then started to design the project around that idea. And then that started with thinking about, all right, well, what kind of game can we make that could easily fit into this? And the number one thing that came to me was a card game, because not only, can you make that without plastic components, we could also, I felt I really wanted to make that game domestically. Since most of our customers are in North America, my hope was to make that in the United States. It didn't end up working out the first time around, but we'll be doing it here the second time, which is great. But knowing that we have limited resources available to us as far as board game manufacturing in the States, that was another thing that played into it, where I was like, well, I know that there are printers here who can make a card game. So at the very least, we can do that. And then if we can build up to doing like more intense grand productions like they do in China with, like miniatures and things, then we could maybe work up to that. But at this point, I was like, all right, let's just start with a card game. We'll start there and then see where it goes. And that has led to some interesting places. So it's been great. And I think we've been able to really see that part of our mission through, because I took those sentiments from the Patagonia founder and then built off of those for Earthborne's mission, which is to make board games as sustainably as possible, not only in the production and manufacturing, but then also in the themes that we explore and the stories that we tell on the tabletop, to try to shed a different light on hobby board gaming, and make games that aren't necessarily all about war and conflict and the darker sides of human experience.
Now, did the theme of the game play into that as well? Like, was that an intentional, very nature-themed game with a very, environmental production?
It didn't start out that way. It just kind of worked out that way. I think it was maybe because I was forming the company at the same time that we were developing the game, that maybe my mindset was just there. But we didn't necessarily know we didn't really know the entire theme of the game, or like how that theme would be expressed when we first started working on it. It just kind of worked out over time that it kind of trended towards this more nature focused, like looking at the future of humanity is something that could be aspired to. That's presented a hopeful future that we could look at and imagine what life could be like if we could reach there, instead of what I was seeing in a lot of popular culture, which just shows the future as a desolate hellscape where humanity is to blame for all of Earth's problems. I really wanted to try to turn that around to show that it doesn't have to be that way. That future is not set in stone, and we can imagine something different.
Now, going into your first campaign did $450,000, a little under 4,800 backers. What, like, incredibly well for a first-time creator. But like, what were your expectations going into that? Like, because there could be ranges, there could be anything. But like, from my perspective, from a first-time creator, that's an incredible success. I don't know how you viewed it. I don't know what your own hopes and dreams were. I don't know if there's a sigh of relief, a disappointment. How was that received for you and your team?
Oh, it was amazing. I really didn't have any real expectations at all. I wasn't sure at all how it would go. According to a lot of people who are watching our campaign, and there's plenty of people who have YouTube channels that critique campaigns and talk about what things could be better and what things could be improved. And I feel like, according to most things, we didn't do anything how we were supposed to, because we effectively announced that the studio and the game existed about 6 weeks before the launch of the campaign, and then launched the campaign without having any gameplay or anything available. We had a design. We knew that we were going to be revealing gameplay throughout the campaign, and I think in the end, I think our ignorance worked out really, really well, because we just did what felt right to us and what we felt like we could actually accomplish. And during the campaign, we had lots of really great beats where we were able to share a demo, and we had live streams where people were playing a prototype version of the game, and it worked out amazingly. I didn't really have any expectations at all. Like, I was hoping for maybe half a million, which we got pretty close, but I had really nothing to base that on. I worked in my year after leaving Asmodee, and then until launching the campaign, about a year and a half, I worked as the studio manager at Chip Theory Games. So
Nice.
So through them, I was able to learn more about what crowdfunding was, how it worked, and honestly, what crowdfunding meant to a small studio and how important that was. And also learned from them, because they do things kind of a similar way, where typically their campaigns they're more aspirational. They don't have a completed game when they go to the campaign. They'll bring you along the journey, and they'll make changes. So I really saw that as license to do the same thing. Granted, they were established and we weren't, but I think what really worked out for us is just having name recognition. People recognizing me from my time at Fantasy Flight Games. I was very, very fortunate to be able to be a public figure at FFG for many years, and gave lots of presentations, and was present in some video features and things. So I think some people, at least inside of the industry, knew who I was, and I think that really helped give us a leg up at the beginning. But yeah, I had no expectations, Alex. I had no idea what was going to happen, so it was pretty awesome to be able to make that amount of money. It carried us through for a couple of years. It was awesome.
Crowdfunding to me is astounding. I've been very involved in crowdfunding in many ways, but not as an actual creator. And I don't think people realize what it means to kind of have all this work, all this energy go into a singular moment. This is not launching a new website, opening a new store where there's a slow process of learning and improving. This is putting every single egg into a single basket that has to go perfectly right. And it's astounding. The sheer amount of times that it does work out to me is astounding. But the stress and everything about it is, I don't envy. I love crowdfunding. I don't envy the creators.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Yeah, at the time. So when I started my company, I was fortunate enough to have one investor. So I had one investor who gave me a little bit of cash to get started, and I used that money to hire Evan Simonette, who's graphic designer, artist. He's our visual design director, and again, that was something that I learned from Chip Theory Games, where I think a lot of the success of their campaign has a ton to do with the art, and they have an artist more or less on staff who's been there for several years. So I made that a priority for me, and I worked with Evan for many years at Fantasy Flight Games, and I knew I wanted to bring him on board. So in the spring of I guess maybe it's technically winter of 21, I brought him on, knowing that, all right, from this point forward, we're going to be spending all of our time just prepping for the crowdfunding campaign. We had about 4 months to do some pieces of art, get everything looking good, and then launch. Yeah, it was. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. Like if it hadn't gone well, then I don't know, maybe I'd go back to Chip Theory or something. But yeah, wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now. That's for sure.
I mean, the unfortunate reality of crowdfunding is that the nature of what it is, it means that people often do back with their eyes. They're backing based on the hopes and dreams of what this game can be, but the visual aesthetic is something they actually can't see, whereas they can't play the game yet. So how a game looks is very important, although how a game actually is tends to be more important for the life cycle of the game, which is a great segue to the next time I started hearing about Earthborne Rangers, because you had your campaign, it launched, it did well, and then suddenly it was PAX Unplugged 2023, and I don't know exact timelines of this and that, but your game was starting to deliver. You were at PAX Unplugged, and I remember being at PAX Unplugged, and all I could hear from everyone was Earthborne Rangers, Earthborne Rangers. It was the most talked about game of the show, at least for the people I was talking to, and not just about the game looking good, but people had an opportunity to demo it, to play it. People were getting their games. It was just an absolute ton of buzz, for me at least. Again, from the outside, it seemed like this was very much when that wave started crescendoing, or whatever that word is. But how was PAX Unplugged for you?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Yeah, I'd never been to PAX Unplugged before. I'd been to one other show representing Earthborne. I went to UK Games Expo
Nice.
that summer. But I was there kind of piggybacking off of someone else's booth. So I was working with a consulting company all about games. They had 2 tables for Earthborne Rangers, the very, very end of their booth, facing towards the wall. So it's like really difficult to find it if you
all the way at the end.
all the way at the back. But the tables were full all day, and that was really great. But at PAX Unplugged, that's our first booth that was our own, and it's the first time that we had games for sale. I have no idea how it would do.
I think you sold out, didn't you?
We did, yeah. We ended up actually having to. We sold out after like the first couple days, and then we knew we were going to sell out after day 1. It became clear that we did not bring enough copies, so we had to rent a car, and then Andrew Fisher drove down to Maryland, where our fulfillment center was, and then put some more games in the car, and then drive back up. And he did all that like early in the morning, and then showed back up just in time. We were just about to sell out, and he showed up with some extra copies. So it was perfect. Yeah, it went really well. And everything that I always heard about, going to Gen Con or big shows is that, it's great if you break even. So that was like my mentality going in. So I was like, if we break even, that'll be great. But then it seems like a simple thing to just, and maybe, people who are more business minded would be like, well, yeah, duh. But when we were at PAX Unplugged, it was very easy for us to break even because we were so small. And it didn't really occur to me until that moment that, a company like FFG, like breaking even at Gen Con, when they're bringing, 20
It's
people,
huge.
they have a gigantic floor space, it costs, and they're putting everyone up in hotels, like, and buying them food and paying for transportation. It costs a ton of money to bring all those people down there. So when they're breaking even, they're still making a ton of money, to break even. So for us, since it was so inexpensive, we were actually ended up, making a little bit of money, and it was amazing. And it was really cool to be able to see like just the difference of like what a being at a convention means to a smaller publisher versus a larger publisher. So it was really great, and also I think for our visibility, to your point about people talking about the game, it created a bunch of buzz. But I was really surprised to find that maybe 9 out of 10 people that came to our booth had never heard of us before. So we were actually reaching new people and reaching the audience, and that was really awesome too. So yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah, we'll be going back. We still don't have the staff to do like the whole convention circuit, but we'll be back at PAX Unplugged again this year, and then I think hopefully next year we'll start adding some additional conventions there along the way. But yeah, it was awesome. If anyone watching has not gone to PAX Unplugged, I highly recommend it. I thought it was great. It's a smaller show than Gen Con, still pretty huge, but it's only 3 days, and in my mind, 3 days is perfect. 4 days is too much.
But so after PAX Unplugged, you got all this buzz. You had this first campaign, and then you went ahead and you went with Gamefound for the Reprint campaign. What made you pivot? I mean, you had clearly had a very good experience on Kickstarter. It had gone well, hit your expectations. What made you choose Gamefound the second time around?
I talked with Gamefound in like the spring of 21 when I was trying to decide what to do for crowdfunding, and at that time I think Gamefound hadn't necessarily been opened up to more creators, and it was very there was definitely like clearly a mission in mind for like the types of projects you guys wanted to have on the platform, and it didn't really seem like the right fit at the time. So then I went to Kickstarter, and yeah, I think that was fine, though my experience with Kickstarter was kind of challenging. And people want to go back and read some of the things and listen to some of the stuff I talked about at the time. Like we had difficulty launching, like the button didn't work to launch the campaign, and I was like frantically trying to contact somebody there. I could not find anyone at Kickstarter. I had to like contact people I knew, to contact people they knew, and then they got back to me. It was a nightmare. I was losing my mind. To your point about like building up to this moment of launch and then like clicking the button and having nothing happen, I was losing it for a full day until it eventually got up later that afternoon. But yeah, when it came time to the second campaign, I was already considering, maybe trying out Gamefound, because at that point had several successful campaigns. Chip Theory did a campaign there, and it went really, really well. And I think Keyforge had also done their first campaign there, and that did well. And
Fantasy Flight X, yes.
Yeah. So I was kind of leaning in that direction anyway, and then I don't remember who from Gamefound reached out, but asked me if I'd already kind of expressed my interest, and asked me if I wanted to be involved in the game feast last fall. So what really kind of won me over is just people reaching out from Gamefound and saying they wanted to work with us, and no one from Kickstarter reached out to say, hey, you want to do more with us. So I really felt that immediately that there was a just interest in being involved and then actually helping us out. And I was really pleasantly surprised to find, during the whole feast process and then everything leading up to the launch, just how much hands-on attention that I got from not just our account manager, but several people at Gamefound. It was honestly it was really, really great. I really appreciated it. So so my decision to go to Gamefound was really more just rooted in, let's try it, let's see how it goes, and then to be rewarded with it went amazing, and the service we received was fantastic. So we'll be going back again for sure.
Beautiful. And the second campaign, I think, had roughly 6,000 backers. It closed at just shy of 1 million. Like, what were your expectations there?
Well, so we weren't really we weren't really sure. We had no idea. We'd gotten some pretty decent momentum from PAX Unplugged. So that was cool. We were starting to see some more reviews come out, so we were able to, and we were on a bunch of like year-end lists So we were able to kind of, at least get a sense that, people are enjoying it, and, a lot of big channels were promoting it. So it was definitely getting the word out. So I felt pretty good about the possibilities. We had a decent number of followers after the feast as well. We had like 3,000, 4,000, something like that followers. So that felt good. It was definitely more than we had on the Kickstarter campaign before we launched. So I don't know. I was thinking maybe the same, that we do maybe like 400,000 again or whatever. And we have other games in the queue. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, if we do pretty much the same as last time, and then we'll launch another campaign later in the year, we'll be able to keep doing what we do. But then we came just shy of 1 million, which was pretty awesome. I really wanted to hit 1 million during the campaign.
It was so close.
It was very close, but then it didn't really even matter, because then we got a really I'll let you
because so I'll tell you, from the Gamefound side, we typically tell people to expect we tell publishers to expect 30 to 50% additional funding on their campaign. It could be less, it could be more. We've had times where we've even seen 100% additional funding. We have had times like that's insane to have $1 million raised to go to $2 million in the pledge manager. Oh my gosh, it's insane! But don't expect that. We tell people, do not expect that. And then I have to check, but I think you might have the record for the sheer amount. I have to check this. I'm not 100% certain, but for the ratio of just how much additional funding you went from just shy of 1 million to you're currently at $3.5 million raised post campaign, pledge manager, everything. Which again, I don't think I've ever seen like a 350% growth. That's insane.
Yeah,
I've never seen that, and I'm sure it was boosted by, like I said, there's lots of review coverage. I know Shut Up and Sit Down was very positive with the game, but like the sheer escalation is blown my mind. I can't imagine what it's like to be in your chair.
Yes, it's been wild, and obviously a lot of that money like in the pledge managers for shipping, and there's
taxes,
there's lots of stuff that comes out of it, obviously. But yeah, so if you were to take into consideration our backer kit from, so we're comparing apples to apples. If our first campaign plus our backer kit was about $750,000 roughly, so even compared to that, it's it's crazy. Obviously, we're incredibly humbled and grateful to be in this position, but I think there's no way we expected this. So we were hoping, because Shut Up and Sit Down stopped by at Pax Unplugged, and mentioned like, oh yeah, we're working on something. Yeah, it's really great. And I was like, oh, awesome. And then we didn't see anything from them for forever. But we were hoping maybe to get a review from them during the campaign. And we were like, okay, well, if that hits and they like it, then even if they don't, maybe we'll hit like 1.5 or something. In total funding. But then the review hit after, and then that saw just a huge spike, and then it's really just kind of continued since then. So to be at the point where we are right now, it's pretty incredible. Like I said, we still have more things to come. We have enough. We were able, but this allows us to take our time with that a little bit more than we were planning on. Pretty much having it ready to go about now. But we'll be able to wait till next year now, which is great. And also, kind of like with the first campaign for us on Kickstarter, while it was a campaign for Earthborne Rangers, it was also effectively a campaign for Earthborne Games, and just
that's how it works.
Yeah, to set ourselves up as a business that can pay people salaries and do all that, and then create more games down the road. So in a similar way, this really puts us in such an amazing position, not only as a company, but for Earthborne Rangers as well, because I've talked about this in a few places, but in my mind, Earthborne Rangers has an arc to it. Like I have an idea for all the tentpole projects that we want to do within that game line, and I really wanted to be able to see it through. And we'll be doing crowdfunding campaigns for the large expansions down the road. But this really puts us in a position where I feel like, for the first time since the project began, that there's really no doubt in my mind. There's really no doubt in my mind that we can actually see that product line through to completion. That's super exciting. And then it provides us puts us in a position now where we don't have to rush our next project. We can take our time to prep all that and get that in as good a shape we can before we bring that to crowdfunding. And yeah,
which I think is
it's
so
amazing.
important. Like something I find is often not fully realized is very often creators are stuck in one of two buckets. You're either creating out of a sense of passion without the experience, the knowledge, the infrastructure to make things go as well as possible, or alternatively, you have all that, but now you're creating under a sense of deadlines. You have to
Yeah.
put things out, you have to create, you have to whatever. And so either one has some form of compromise attached. And there's a select few creators who manage to find themselves in that kind of overlap where things have gone well enough that they're kind of still able to create from a sense of passion, but while having the infrastructure without the pressure. So like I'm thrilled for you that you have so quickly found yourself in that spot.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And not to say there's no pressure. Like, I feel like if anything, this just puts more pressure on us to deliver an amazing experience.
Different kind of
so,
pressure.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so I guess let's close with that. Which, when is your next game? Any teases about it? Is it nature themed, environmentally conscious? Like, what can you say about anything? You can say as little or as much as you want.
Yeah, well, I'll say as much as we've said in other places. Is our next game is it's a competitive game. It's another card game. It plays two to well, I think it can technically play any number of players, but tuned to 2 to 4. It's it's by Corey DeVore and Michael Boggs. Corey DeVore is our main marketing guy. He does a lot of marketing graphics and all of our videos for us. And when I brought him on, he brought this game with him, and I think it's just a fantastic game. And we've been working on it for the last couple of years. So the rules, the development is pretty much all done, and we've taken a long time working on the theme and fine-tuning that, and then finding a art style, which we were able to, I think, seal the deal on those aspects of it just these past couple of weeks. So it's not nature themed. But it's another sci-fi game. So Earthborne Rangers is nature themed, but it's also sci-fi. This game is also sci-fi, but it'll explore some things that we're not exploring in Earthborne Rangers. And our hope is to bring it to crowdfunding at the beginning of next year. So obviously I'll be talking to the folks at Gamefound about ramping that up. But right now we've started to work on various pieces of key art, and we're just trying to settle on a title. And as soon as we have those things in place, then we'll make an official announcement about it. But it shouldn't be, in the grand scheme of things, it will not be very long before you hear more about this game.
Well, I'm looking forward, and I'm thrilled to hear about your journey, your success, and just where you and everyone has been as part of the company. It's very inspiring to hear.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.